Great that Ian's still carrying on his good work. Now, back to that earlier story. Our emergency services do great work helping us when we're in trouble. But sometimes they have to help each other. The A31 near Alton in Hampshire. A mangled police motorbike lies in the road. Its debris is strewn across both carriageways. Nearby air ambulance medics are fighting to save the life of its rider, PC Nick Barman. Travelling at more than 100 miles an hour on his way to a traffic accident, Nick was hit by a yellow car. Accident investigators take these pictures detailing the path of his powerful motorbike as it careered 75 metres along the central reservation. Its front wheel then hit a drain gully, catapulting him into the air. Nick landed between the carriageways, narrowly missing a silver Volvo. Video from a police helicopter captures images of the bike plus Nick's boots and leathers. Nick's friend and colleague Tristan witnessed the whole shocking incident.
Obviously a bit of a heart in your mouth moment then. You kind of can't believe what you're seeing.
Tristan has attended many accidents, but this time it's a friend whose life is hanging in the balance. To his relief, a motorist comes to help.
There was a paramedic in the queuing traffic on the opposite carriageway who was some kind of expert with the nature of Nick's injuries and knew exactly what to do.
Tristan quickly closes down the entire southbound carriageway to allow access for emergency vehicles and the air ambulance. The helicopter is minutes away. Specialist trauma doctor Professor Charles Deakin is on board.
As we were overhead, I had a chance to have a look and see what had actually happened at the incident below. It was obvious that he'd been travelling at very high speed and had come off his bike and had tumbled down the road. That's a long way to bounce, so I was expecting a very seriously ill person when I got to the scene.
Nick's leathers are quickly cut away so Professor Deakin can assess his injuries.
We just had literally a minute or two to sort him out in terms of particularly his airway and breathing before his heart actually stopped. He was that poorly.
Nick is struggling to breathe and has multiple fractures. The medical team works quickly to stabilise him. Behind a screen held by firefighters, Professor Deakin puts Nick into an induced coma.
Normally, that's only something we'd do in hospital, so it's quite a delicate procedure to do out on the roadside and is not without its challenges.
Nick's airway is clear, but he can't breathe. His lungs have collapsed.
The way to treat that is to make an incision through the chest wall in both sides of the chest, just under the armpit, which goes through all the muscles between the ribs and into the chest cavity itself. And the purpose of that is to let the air out, which is accumulated outside the lungs, and the lungs are then able to re-inflate. So that is done very quickly and just with a scalpel, but is immediately life-saving.
But Nick has additional injuries. They're extensive and complicated. He has internal bleeding and his arms, legs and pelvis are shattered.
We worked our way around and splintered his arms and his legs, and also we were concerned about his pelvis that was probably broken, so that can bleed very significantly, so we needed to put a splint around his waist to try and hold his pelvic bones together and reduce the bleeding.
There's no more they can do at the scene. Nick's blood pressure is falling. They must get him to hospital. The air ambulance rushes him to Southampton General, a specialist trauma centre. Back at Police HQ, word of the accident has spread. Nick's girlfriend Alice is not on shift, so it falls to a senior officer to make the difficult call.
He was very frank, he was very calm. He didn't give me very much detail. I don't think I really thought too much about it. My main concern was to get to the hospital.
It takes 15 minutes for the air ambulance to reach Southampton General. An emergency trauma team is waiting. They rush Nick straight into resuscitation and operate immediately. He has a torn bowel and concussion, and his entire body is shattered. He's broken both knees, all his ribs on the left side, a shoulder, an ankle, one of his feet, and his pelvis. After long and complicated surgery, he's taken to intensive care. Alice is at the hospital but must endure an agonising 8-hour wait before she can be with him.
Seeing someone that you care about like that with a machine breathing for them, it's very difficult. Very difficult. And I think it also, in that second, you can't do anything. I just remember staring at him thinking, you can't die.
The accident has an effect on all Nick's colleagues.
Those of us that were involved went home feeling extremely low, not knowing what the outcome the following day was going to be. My wife knew something had gone wrong, A, because I was so late off. And that's, I think, when you just sort of let it all out. I burst out in tears that night. Because up until that point, you just feel you can't let that emotion out because you've got to do your job.
The following day, Nick regains consciousness and becomes aware of the shocking reality of his injuries.
I couldn't move, I couldn't turn over. There wasn't a part of me that actually, other than my right arm, that actually moved.
Tristan visits his friend and is shocked by his appearance.
I'd never seen anything like it, to be honest. The pins and the bars and everything that were in his legs, there were just so many of them.
After 2 more successful operations in the next 48 hours and 5 days in intensive care, Nick is out of danger. He's moved to a general ward where he starts a grueling daily regime of physiotherapy in an attempt to get him back on his feet, but the medics aren't hopeful.
My legs didn't go straight anymore, they were so bent in one position, and my back also didn't go straight. And I remember thinking at that point, this actually feels like this is never going to be right again.
But thanks to Nick's sheer determination, and against all the odds, just 14 weeks after his accident, Nick takes his first steps.
I managed to go from walking 1 or 2 lengths of the parallel bars to walking outside the parallel bars and then walking between cones and things like that.
Nick later returned to work, but due to the extent of his injuries, eventually he had to give up life with the police. The driver of the yellow car was fined for careless driving and given 9 points on his licence.
I don't hold any ill will towards him. He made a mistake. We all make mistakes.
After taking medical retirement, Nick moved to Scotland with Alice, where he settled for a slower pace of life.
I can't walk very far. I can't walk on uneven ground. If I step on something uneven, my ankle goes over, followed by my knee, and then I'll fall, and I fall quite regularly.
He will push himself, sometimes to his detriment, because he doesn't want to feel he can't do things.
I just have to accept there are a lot of things I can't do anymore, and I've just had to change the way I go about life.
But he knows it's a miracle he survived at all.
So many circumstances worked out in my favour. I don't think you could have got a closer call than that.
Unbelievable to think anyone could survive that crash, but thank goodness Nick did. Join me next time on Close Calls for more amazing stories from people who've lived to tell the tale.